Second recording. Amina looks up at the sky. There's no way to tell. I would go if I could, I think. He knows this is a dangerous thing to say. People resent those who manage to get out. They are considered cowards. And although he suspects that anyone who's still sane would wish to leave, very few people will admit it, even to themselves, and fewer still would ever say it out loud. There are only two ways out now. Either you know someone with power, and you get a pass through the tunnel, or you have money. Other than that, you're stuck. So this is an important thing to write down. And even this, that you are stuck, I could use that as a quote. Those who had power or money before the war began have already left, and those who have power or money now have it because of the war, so have no incentive to leave. Amirna doesn't appear shocked by his admission, though. Why didn't you leave with Raza? He shrugs. I didn't think it would go on this long. I wanted to protect our apartment, and I didn't want to lose my job. Maybe I made a mistake. No, we have to stay. If we all go, they will come down from the hills, and the city will be theirs. If we stay, they will shoot at us from the hills until we're all dead, and then they'll come down just the same. The world would never allow that. They'll help us sooner or later, she says. He's not sure from her tone of voice if she believes what she says. So this is important. This siege has gone on for 4 years, and the entire world allowed that to happen, right? They did not intervene. People did not get involved in this war, and you have to remember it was not that long ago that this was taking place. He doesn't know how she could. They must both see the same city disintegrating around them. No one is coming. So I would highlight this as a quote for Dragan, right? He does no hope left. Since his wife and son left, he has no hope that anything will ever change. His voice is harsher than it means to be. We're here on our own, and no one's coming to help us. Don't you know that? Amina looks down and fastens the top 2 buttons of her coat. She puts her hands in her pockets. After a while, she says very quietly, I know no one is coming. I just don't want to believe it. So this is a fantastic quote. It shows kind of the hopelessness of the situation. Dragan knows exactly what she means. He doesn't want to believe it either. For a long time, he held out hope, listened to the news, waited for someone to put a stop to this madness. All his life, he has lived under the rule of law. If you broke the law, the police would arrest you. There was order, and it was unquestioned. Then, in the blink of an eye, it all fell apart. Like many others, Dragan waited far longer for order to be restored than was logical. He tried to go about his life as though things were normal, as though someone was in charge. The men on the hills were a minor inconvenience that would be resolved at any moment. Sanity would prevail. But then, one day, he could no longer feel himself. This wasn't a temporary situation, a momentary glitch in the system, and no one was going to fix it. I worked at the bakery with a man who survived Jasenovac and then Auschwitz, Dragan says. The man had retired 5 or 6 years before there were men on the hills, but Dragan had still seen him every so often. They would meet for coffee or occasionally a glass of plum brandy. He had never spoken to Dragan about his life during the war until one day shortly before the fighting began, when he told him about being in the camps. He told him how, at Jasenovac, the guards had a competition to see who could kill the most people in one day. The winner, a guard named Peter Brzaka, killed 1,360 people with a butcher's knife. For winning this contest, he was given some wine, a suckling pig, and a gold watch. After the war, he escaped to the United States, where to this day his name is on a list of resident war criminals. Many of those killed were the fathers and grandfathers of the men on the hills and the people they are shooting at. The last time I saw him, he told me, what is coming is worse than anything you could imagine, Dragan says. He killed himself the day the war began. So this is a really interesting quote here, that someone who has survived concentration camps in Germany and in Poland, where millions of people were killed, would kill himself at the beginning of another war because he couldn't handle going through it again. Amina shakes her head. This cannot be as bad as what happened in those camps. Dragan considers this, wondering how relative suffering is. No, it's not. I don't think he thought it would be. But I think he believed that what he and others suffered there meant something, that people had learned from it, but they haven't. Right? The idea that war is repeating itself constantly around the world. Haven't they? Amina asks. Look around, Dragan answers. Though he had intended it as a rhetorical statement, Amina does indeed look around. Prompted by her, Dragan does too, and he wonders if she sees the same things as he does. Does she see the gray symbol that is everywhere? Does she see the mangled buildings, the wreckage of the streets, how people have grown tired and thin, slinking around like frightened animals? She must. How could she not? He doesn't know why she sought him out, why she didn't just walk by him and pretend he wasn't there. There was no need for this. He didn't need to see how much the war had taken from her or from him. One of the things about war, she says, is that I've been down a lot of streets I've never been on before. It has changed my geography. Dragan nods. He has noticed the same thing, found it curious to learn how much of the city he's lived in his whole life was a block or two outside of his experience, how a shell here or a sniper there have altered the streets which are familiar, which are only vaguely known before. There's a street near my house that before the war I'd never walked down, Amina continues. But with the sniper at the bottom of the street, I had to go the long way around, so I found myself in this new street. There was this house with a huge cherry tree in the yard, full of ripe fruit, and an old woman was picking the cherries. She must have had 15 or 20 kilograms of fruit picked, and there was still more on the tree. I went up to her, mostly because I had never seen a tree like that in Sarajevo, had no idea that the cherries grew here. That's a beautiful tree, I told her, and she told me that her mother had planted it when she was a girl, and that it had always given good fruit. She was picking the fruit for her grandchildren, but was a little worried, because you can't give children only sweet things. I suggested she sell some of the cherries, and she told me that perhaps she would. By coincidence, a few days later, Jovan had brought home salt that he'd gotten from someone, a huge 5-kilogram bag. It was far more than we needed or could ever use. I thought of the woman, and when I went by, I took her a kilogram. Amina's face is relaxed and her voice is soft. Dragan isn't really sure what the point of her story is, but he's happy that she's telling him. The woman was beside herself. I've never seen anyone smile so much. She actually hugged me. Over a kilogram of salt. As I was leaving, she gave me 2 big pails full of cherries. A ridiculous amount. I said, I can't possibly eat all of these. I don't have any children. It's just me and my husband. But she insisted. Give them away, she said. Do whatever you like with them. I have more than I need. So I gave them to our neighbors, small baskets, to 10 different families. You were good to give her the salt, Dragan says, and he means it. I didn't need it. She didn't have to give me the cherries either. Amina shrugs. Isn't that how we're supposed to behave? Isn't that how we used to be? I don't know, Dragan says. I can't remember if we were like that or just think we were. It seems impossible to remember what things were like. He suspects that this is what the men on the hills want the most. They would, of course, like to kill them all, but if they can't, they would like to make them forget how they used to be, how civilized people act. Now, this is important, right? War destroys usually human behavior. People become very selfish in the desire to self-preserve. He wonders how long it will take before they succeed. As long as he stands there waiting to cross, he knows they're winning. It's time, his day, his life, move through this intersection and towards whatever end awaits him. I think I'll cross now, he says to Amina. Okay, she says, I'll follow after you. Dragan moves towards the intersection. His stomach hurts. When he's one step away from being out in the open, he takes a deep breath and runs. He tries to keep his head low, but after 3 steps, he feels his back begin to ache and he straightens up. His lungs are raw, his legs like rubber. He can't believe that he isn't even a quarter of the way across. He has never felt so old. He feels the shot an instant before he hears it. There's a sharp zip, a rush of air as a bullet snaps past his left ear, and then the harsh blast of a gun. For an instant, he wonders if he's been shot. He knows that if he'd be dead if he was. He heard the bullet, and that means the sniper missed. He's surprised, confused, and frightened. It's not clear to him what he should do. For no more than 2 seconds, he stands motionless, frozen. It seems like a millennia. Then he runs back the way he came. He doesn't feel his lungs or his legs or his stomach. He becomes automatic, an animal symbol, and flees. His body is braced for the sniper's next shot, the one that could finish him. The closer he gets to safety, the more he expects it. He can see Amina standing behind the boxcar. Her mouth hangs open, her face contorted, and he thinks he hears her calling his name. His shoulder slams into metal and his legs give out. Amina grabs his arm as he tries not to fall, and the world blurs around him. People are asking him if he's okay, and he thinks he is, but he can't answer them. For this is the first time Dragan has ever been shot at.